What's going on, guys? Bob Buskirk here at ThinkComputers, and today I'm going to be showing you the UEFI BIOS here on the ASRock X99E-ITX AC motherboard. Now, this BIOS should be pretty much the same across all of ASRock's X99 motherboards. Obviously, a little bit options might be different depending on the motherboard you have, but overall, pretty much the same design. So on the main page here, as you can see, we can use our mouse as well as our keyboard. On the main page here, you can see that it just tells us the information about what we have. So lets us know our BIOS version, processor, all that kind of stuff, our memory that's installed. And then you have your My Favorites, and you can actually set things to your My Favorites. All you have to do is highlight an item and then hit F5 to add it to your favorites, and then it will show up right there. So for easy access, maybe options that you change quite a lot, you can go ahead and add them to My Favorites. Now, everything you're going to want to change as far as tweaking and overclocking and all of that will be under the OC Tweaker menu. So it gives you all of your target speeds for both your CPU and your memory, which is good. So if you're changing settings around, you can go ahead and see what you're shooting for. Different settings here. We can go into our CPU configuration. This is where you can change all your CPU ratios and all of that. You can also set your different power settings as well as turn off Intel SpeedStep and things like that you want to. Everything that you're going to have here is just all for the CPU, specifically for overclocking and changing your frequency. DRAM configuration, it is pretty much the same thing. All of your different voltages for memory and all of that are here, and all of your timings that you can go ahead and change. The fiber configuration, that is all for your different voltages for your CPU and integrated circuits and all of that. Pretty much, if you don't really know what you're doing, I would just leave everything on auto here, but you can go ahead and change all this around if you want to, especially if you're doing overclocking. And then your voltage configuration, that's the rest of your voltage, especially your CPU input voltage and your DRAM voltages can all be set right here. And your CPU load line configuration, so you can set it to different levels between 1 and 5. And that's pretty much it for the OC Tweaker. Now, if we go into the advanced tab up here, you can go in and set different settings for everything that's pretty much on the motherboard. So the rest of your CPU settings, some things that you might want to turn on, like you can turn on different, all the cores or just a couple. You can turn on hyper-threading. You can, set the different C states if you want. All that kind of stuff you can set here. Of course, chipset configurations, everything to do with the chipset, so you can turn the Ethernet controllers on or off if you want. You can turn, the HD audio on or off, the wireless, all that kind of stuff you can turn on or off if you want. Storage configuration, of course, that's all of your storage and everything like that. So you can set the different configurations for your SATA devices and the M.2 as well as the eSATA on the back. You can set everything up that way. Super I/O, really don't have to worry about that. Our ACPI configuration, that's just different alarms and different things that you can set up. USB configuration, of course, that sets your USB controller mode and all of that, and your legacy USB support. One thing that you might want to turn on, it all depends, they have this USB compatibility patch. So if you're having trouble with your keyboard or your mouse being recognized by the BIOS for some reason, you can go in and enable this, and then maybe one of those will actually work. We actually had to do this. It was kind of weird. We turned it off, we turned it on, and then our keyboard worked, but our mouse didn't, and then we turned it back off, and then both worked. It was kind of weird. But that is pretty much it. And then we can go into our tools, and there's some tools. So you can do a system browser, which I load here, and it gives you a full overview of the actual board itself, and it lets you know what's installed. So if you hover over anything, you can kind of see what everything is. So you can see this is our processor, you can see this is our memory and all of that. It's actually pretty cool. You can see where you have a SATA drive installed. Pretty like, if you're not sure what does what or anything like that, you can kind of hover over and you can see what each little component does. We have our online management guard. But basically what it does is it restricts internet access for a certain time. So you can set up a schedule or something like that. So say you might not want your kids, on the internet at a certain time. You can set it so it disables it not on a software level, but on a hardware level through the BIOS. It's actually pretty cool. So, your kids can't go in and change the software if they, it's much harder to go into the BIOS and do dehumidifier function. You can turn that on if you want. Easy RAID installer, easy driver installer. UEFI tech service, which allows you to send an email out to tech without being on your computer. Say your computer's not booting or something like that, you can go ahead and do that. Boot manager, and then your UEFI update, which is actually pretty easy. You can actually instantly flash a BIOS with a flash drive, or you can go ahead and grab it off the internet through the BIOS, so you don't have to go into Windows or do anything like that. If you don't have to, we have a live hardware monitor, which is going to monitor all of your temperatures, voltages, and fan speeds in real time, so you can see all that. And then they have this fantastic tuning, which will allow you to go ahead and tune your fan, the different fans, and set the fan profiles and all of that. So you can go ahead and set all that up and customize it if you want. And then you can set all your temperature settings as well. So you can set higher low temperature settings and all of that. Over temperature protection, you can turn on all of that stuff in the hardware monitor. As far as security goes, you can set up passwords and all of that. And then under your boot, you can set up your boot options and, you know, set everything the way you want it, as far as the way you want everything to boot. And then under exit, you can also do boot override. So if I was installing Windows from a flash drive, it would be listed here, and I can just go ahead and hit that, and it will boot directly to my flash drive, so I don't have to change it back later, all of that. And then of course, when you're done, you just hit save changes and exit, and you're pretty much good to go. This BIOS works really well. It's not as well polished as some of the other ones, say from Gigabyte or Asus, but it works really well. Everything is pretty easy to find once you find it. Again, you do have the My Favorites menu as well, so if you have settings that you change quite often, you could go ahead and add them in. Didn't have any problems with it freezing. The only issue, like I said, was with it recognizing both our keyboard and our mouse, which are USB. Kind of got all that figured out. So that is pretty much it. If you have any questions about this BIOS, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. And remember guys, if you enjoy our videos, why don't you subscribe? Catch you guys later.